Hi, everybody. This is Higgy, and I want to welcome everyone to the No More Heroin Survivor Series. And I'd like to welcome our guests from YouTube as well. We're streaming live to Facebook on the No More Heroin page, and we're streaming simultaneously to the No More Heroin Survivor Series YouTube channel as well. I want to let the audience build. We're going to play a song by Joe Nestor. I usually play a video, but streaming is being really difficult tonight with the heavy traffic. So please enjoy the song by Nestor Nation. How many times?
How many times are you going to doubt yourself? How many times are you going to repeat the same mistakes before you finally experience enough pain that you want to make a change? How many times? How many times you going to tell yourself you're giving up? How many times you going to write it down and rip it up? How many times have you invested in luck? You find that penny facing heads down, but turn around and flip it up. Don't you believe in the fake? Believe in your faith. Now watch how everything just seems to fall into place. And you ain't even gotta try, it's like you ain't in the race. Cause every time you praise his name, you'll be receiving his grace and praise. Now keep me from the wicked, protect me from the snares, and help me spread this message to anybody who cares. Cause I done wrestled with them lions and tigers and bears. I'm wearing the armor of God, intruders beware. How many times have you prayed in the name of? How many times have you shown in the same love that he shows to you? How many times? How many times? How many times have you prayed in the name of? How many times have you shown in the same love that he shows to you? How many times? How many times? How many times you gonna lie to yourself? How many times you been denying yourself? How many times? How many times? How many times you look inside of yourself and you're ashamed of what you see, but you don't ask for no help? You'd rather drown in misery and take that rum off the shelf. You pour another shot and blame it on the hand you were dealt, but you're forgetting about the pain that all your family felt while you were running in the streets like a slave for a bag of dope. Your parents worried that their baby might not make it home. They lie awake and they wait and they crying by the phone, praying that they don't get the call that the baby is gone. I know it hurts, but everything that I'm speaking is true. I only say it cause I know it, I used to be you, but I done made it and I'm grateful I'm one of the few. Now I'm headed back just to say that you can make it too. How many times have you prayed in the name of? How many times have you shown in the same love that he shows to you? How many times? How many times? How many times? How many times have you prayed in the name of? How many times have you shown in the same love that he shows to you? How many times? How many times? How many times? It doesn't matter how many times you fail. It doesn't matter how many times you almost got it right. People aren't going to keep track or care about your failures. Neither should you. It's more important that you learn from them, that you grow from them, and that you keep pushing forward. Because at the end of the day,
Marvin? Hi, Monica.
it doesn't matter how
Hi,
many
Amy.
times you got it wrong. What truly matters is how many times you get it right. It doesn't matter how many times you've been beaten down. It doesn't matter how many people believe in you now. All that matters, you believe in yourself. Because there's a reason that you're breathing and it's keeping you round. And everything that you've been going through.
Hi, Lex. Love you. Whoa. Sorry about that. My microphone. What's up, B. Clark from Streamer? How are you? Good to see everybody in here. Everybody loves Nestor Nation. My buddy Joe Nestor's got some really powerful, inspirational music. Marvin, I love you, my brother. Good to see you. How many times?
Stop doubting yourself. Because if you don't believe in yourself, nobody else will either. As long as you have air in your lungs, you still have a chance to get it right.
That's right. Kevin Wyatt, what's up, my dude? Hi, everybody. Welcome to the No More Heroin Survivor Series. The Survivor Series is an original product of No More Heroin, and we showcase inspirational testimonies of people who have overcome seemingly insurmountable odds and are defying the odds by living a life of purpose and destiny. And tonight is no exception. I want everyone to please welcome my guest from Farmington, Utah, the tattooed life coach, Rob Eastman.
What's happening, man? Thank you for having me. I'm so happy to be on here.
What's up, Christoph? I love you, bro. Hey, thank you for being here. We met each other through Instagram. I started seeing your posts, and I was looking for some fitness inspiration, and I started following you. Like, this guy really knows what he's doing, you know. And you have an amazing inspirational testimony of, you know, overcoming addiction and turning your life around and really paying it forward and helping people from all walks of life. You work with the youth. I'm gonna let you tell everybody what you're doing, but it's really, really compelling, really inspirational. And please just let everybody know where you're from and give us a little background on who Rob Eastman is.
All right, man. So I'm born and raised in Utah. I feel like my story might be a little different than most in the sense that I had, like, growing up, I was bullied and I had ADHD and all of that. The mental health stuff was definitely there, but growing up, my dad was very successful, and I just felt, I'll give a little background on my mental health. I was ADHD in kindergarten, bullied pretty much every single day of elementary. So I started fighting back, and I really had my first suicidal thought in the third grade. And in Utah, our prominent religion is Mormon. And so when I was told that if I was baptized, that my life would change, I really believed it. And so I was really excited, and the day came when you're 8 years old, you get baptized, and I went and I got baptized. And in my mind, that meant that I was going to be good at math. I was going to be popular. I wasn't going to be called ugly, stupid, you know, all these different things. And so when I went back to school on Monday, and nothing changed, that was really the first time I started waging a war with God. And I felt like everybody all the adults were lying to me. And so I don't know about the rest of you, but at 8 years old, having a belief system shaken up like that, I didn't know where else to go. And not being able to sit still in class like everybody else and all these different things, it created a problem. And I had a real bad anger problem. So I just started fighting a lot and kind of became the bully killer. You know, anybody that was being picked on, I wanted to go and save them, and which helped and caused more problems. Then when I got to junior high, I call it wearing masks, man. I was whatever you wanted me to be. I just didn't want to get picked on anymore. So I pretended who I was with this group, and I hung out with the religious kids, and I hung out with the jocks, and I hung out with the gangsters, and I hung out with all these different things. And I'd go home at the end of the day, and I was empty because I knew I was none of those things.
You were the stereotypical chameleon.
Yeah, I was really good.
Yeah,
that's why I was the Swiss Army knife. I had any tool to get you to like me, and none of them were real. So as we're going through, I got to the point where I was hanging out I was in a gang and carrying a gun and had a party. Was really the first big deal. And my girlfriend broke up with me, and I ended up playing Russian roulette that night. Luckily the gun didn't go off, and that was really my first cry for help. But I grew up and I didn't have grandparents. I didn't know why. So when the policeman came and picked me up from that party, and I think I was like 13 or 14 years old at the time, and he took me home, my dad kind of got in my face and was like, "Do you know why you don't have grandparents?" I was like, "No." And he proceeded to let me know that his grandfather, his mother, both committed suicide by the time that he was 31 years old. And that was kind of we don't talk about that in this family. You're not going to do it. And that's that. So rather than getting the help I needed, I just needed to stuff it deeper. And I didn't know how to deal with the emotional pain anymore. So as soon as I got into high school and was introduced to weed, it was like game over, right? First time I smoked, I was like, my anxiety goes away, my pain goes away, there's kids that like me, and that would have been great if that would have taken the pain away. But it's like everybody knows, as long as you're high, great. But as soon as that wears off, the pain is still there. There's no life skill in drugs. There's no life skill in substance, and you can pretty much fast forward through the next 20 years. I was a drug addict for 20 years. At the end, on a daily basis, I was doing coke, heroin, meth, pills, drinking, anything, really trying to kill myself. And it got to the point I've been married and divorced a couple times, and my daughter was just born. I was so bad into heroin that I couldn't function for, like, in my brain, I'm like, I can't go to work unless I'm high. But then I'd get so high I couldn't go to work. I don't know if any of you have ever experienced that.
Been there.
So my job ended up being my wife at the time, who just had a baby, needed to go out and get a job, and my job was to stay home and feed my baby and make sure she was clean. Sounds simple enough. One day my wife left $20 on the counter and said, go buy diapers and some formula. And you know how that story goes. I went out and I meant to go to the store, but I ended up at my dope dealer's house.
Sure.
And went home and was going to shoot up and then go handle the rest of the business for my daughter. And that's all I remember. And my wife came home and I'd passed out, and my daughter hadn't been fed. She hadn't been changed. So she ended up moving out. And I found myself back on my parents' couch at 31 years old, about to be divorced. And finally, I was very suicidal my entire life. And I made the decision that I finally needed to do that. And so I went out and bought a bunch of heroin and shot up, and enough that would kill, 10 or 15 people. And the worst thing in my mind happened. I woke up the next day, and it was maybe 3 or 4 days after that. My parents knew I was pretty sick, and my dad came down one morning and he was crying and handed me a piece of paper. And I said, what is it? And he's like, just read it. So I started reading it, and he wrote my obituary. Him and my mom had stayed up the night before writing my obituary, telling me they loved me and they knew I was going to die, but I wasn't going to do it in their basement, and I needed to get out. And that's when I was homeless for about 10 days in Salt Lake City. And I don't know how you have ego at that point, but I was too proud to be homeless, and I knew that I finally needed to end my life. So the only way I could see my daughter was if my parents were watching me, and the only way I could get back in their house is if it was to see my daughter. So I wanted to go up and kiss everybody, let them know I loved them. And as I was leaving, I stole one of my dad's handguns, and we have a big temple up on the mountain, and I went up above there. Thought that was fitting because I'd never had a prayer answered by God, and I hated him, and it was kind of a spiteful night. And I knelt down and I put that gun in my mouth, and I started pulling the trigger, and this vision of my daughter and my mom popped into my head. And as I'm sitting there, I'm thinking through it, and like, man, my daughter's only 7 months old. She never has to know me. I will never embarrass her. She won't know what a loser I am. She'll be fine. Any man could do a better job than me. And then my mom, on the other hand, she's such a religious person, and she loved God. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to say a prayer to her God, so that when he doesn't answer me, that when she dies, she can go look him in the face and say, you failed me. And I knelt back down. I put the gun in my mouth, and I said a prayer. And I said, I don't know anything about a still small voice. I'm going to need something a little bit louder than that. And if I don't get the answer by the time I open my eyes, I'm pulling this trigger. And that was August 31st, 2009. And right as I was going to pull the trigger and open my eyes, a firework display went off above the temple. And shortly after that, I heard a voice, and it said, is that loud enough? And by this time, I'm not a religious man. I don't even know if I believe in God. And I was paralyzed, and I just laid there bawling. And it was probably a good 20 minutes before I could even move. I was so scared. I didn't know what happened. And that's when my recovery journey started, man. I went down, I dropped the gun off. I didn't even stay there long enough. I just told them what had happened, and I drove myself straight to the hospital.
Wow.
And that started it. And so I went to a 60-day rehab, and I learned a lot about myself. I'd been to a couple before. This wasn't my first rodeo, but this one was different. I knew that if I didn't get it this time, I was going to die. So as I go in and I'm sitting there, and my wife's coming to see me on family days, you know, they give you one day a week where your family gets to come hang out, and my daughter, and I'm thinking, you know, when I have a clear head, I've got everything figured out, you know, I've got all the answers. And the 60 days was up. We were doing good. She comes and picks me up, and we drive home. And I got out, and she didn't. She rolled the window down, said, "By the way, we're divorced." And I was like, "Oh man!" So I was struggling right out the gate. And my brother knew I was struggling, so he picked me up, and we were going to go on a little vacation. And when you don't pay your bills for 90 days, the bank comes and takes things. And when my parents said they were done, they meant it. And they were pretty good enablers and paid my bills. And this time they didn't. So the second I left town, I got a phone call from a friend, and he's like, "What happened to your truck?" I was like, "Nothing happened to my truck." And he's like, "Yeah, it's on a flatbed going down Fifth South." So next thing I know, the bank came in, and they took my home, they took my business, they took my car. So all in the first, like, maybe first month of sobriety, my wife left me, and I lost everything. And at 9 months sober, I got a phone call and found out that my dad passed away on the side of the road from a diabetic low. And
I'm sorry.
yeah, and
That's such a tremendous burden all by itself early in recovery, you know, compounded by all the other collateral damage that you'd accomplished, you know, you'd accumulated. How are you able to push forward through that?
Spite towards God, you know, unfortunately, that's what it was. I was like, plenty of reason to kill myself, plenty of reason to relapse. But at this point, now that I didn't have my dad, like I had a lot of regrets. I was a jackass to my dad. I wasn't like, I wanted to make it up. We were starting to have a good relationship for the first time in 31 years. So I'm sitting there thinking, like, if there is a heaven, my dad is definitely there. And so my dad was a state senator, right? Wow. My uncle was one of the 12 apostles in the LDS church. So the level in which I lived under the shadows was heavy by itself. So now he's gone. I'm like, if he's in heaven, he's running the show. Screw you, God. I'm going to pray to my dad. Right? I was angry. I wanted some answers.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was like 4 days after my dad's funeral I don't even know if we'd had the funeral. I think it was just 4 days after he died. I was running. I don't know if you're familiar with Ragnar. There's a race. Mm-hmm. Okay. So I was running a Ragnar race. I was supposed to run a Ragnar race. And my family's like, "Oh, he'd want you to do it." And so I'm like, whatever. And I was still smoking cigarettes, and I wasn't into fitness yet. And that night,
like a primitive triathlon type thing?
No, you're on a team, and you have 3 legs each, and you just run. It's like 300 miles in 24 hours between your teammates.
Wow. Just run.
Yeah. So I'm out there, and it's my night run, and it's 2 a.m. It's a 10-mile run, and it's freezing cold outside. I'm bawling my eyes out, and I'm running, and like 20 minutes into the run, like visually, I see my dad running next to me. And I'm like so fulfilled in that moment. So I'm thinking, okay, I've got to be emotionally broken down and physically broken down to see my dad. So overnight, I went from I'd run like 5 times a year to becoming an ultra marathoner. I wanted to find my dad. I wanted to feel him. And I had a lot of fear at the time that God was going to come because I was so angry at him, and he was going to take my daughter, like the fear of losing her. And my ex-wife had just moved away, and I measured the distance, and it was like 33 miles from my house to her house. And I'm thinking, if there's a natural disaster, could I run to save my daughter? So I measured that, and then my next race was a 35-mile race in the mountains. And never saw my dad again, just to let you know. Mm-hmm. Kind of chasing that dragon. Like, I felt it, I wanted it, and I needed it. And I don't know about any of you, but I'm an extremist. I did drugs extremely, you know, and everything, the way I live.
Everything's over the top.
Yeah. And so through that, I'm sitting there in that race and I'm 20 miles in and I'm way up. There's like 7,000 foot of elevation gain that I've done already. And I'm looking around for somebody to come
man, that
save me.
sounds really intense.
Yeah, I'm looking around for the sideline guy to come and save me in the four-wheeler or something, and there's nobody there to save me. So at that point, another safe time to find out what I'm really made of, right? So those next 15 miles getting off the mountain and completing the race, I learned more about myself in that time than I did the prior 31 years of my life. And so I went ham on that, and I ran another 12 ultra marathons. I was ranked in the world in obstacle racing in 2010. Like I was just doing these extreme things, trying to find myself, trying to find my strengths, because the only thing that I was ever good at was sports. And after my dad passed, I took the time. My mom, she was a tough love lady. So I went from making a lot of money owning a concrete company to making nothing, being on food stamps, government assisted living. And I couldn't afford a therapist. So I went back to school and I studied only psychology. And I fell in love with it. I could apply so much of what I was reading to my own life. So I didn't have to remember it. I just applied it. And then I used fitness as a way to teach people how to do hard things in a safe environment. And that journey started about 9 years ago. I was a couple years sober by this time that I had enough knowledge and enough life coaching experience and things to really make a difference. And it started in the park at an elementary school. And then I sold everything I owned and bought a bunch of horse stall mats and put them in my mom's teeny, like 15 by 15 foot room in her basement and called it Eastman Fitness. And then I started cage fighting. That was played at the prison. So now I'm getting these prisoners coming out of jail wanting to train with me. So the story is just off the wall, but I got into MMA at 35 years old, and then I finally got married, and she had a son, a teenage boy, and he was playing baseball at the time, and I was cage fighting at the time. So the two worlds, like sitting and watching baseball compared to cage fighting, the intensity wasn't there.
Yeah.
So I'm like, buddy, what do you want to do? I'll change. If you do something different, I'll help coach. And he's like, I'll try wrestling. And so I went to the junior high just to help out. And they're like, yeah, you need a background check. So I was like, okay. I'm like 4 years sober at the time. And I go to the school district, get my fingerprints. They're like, you'll heal back in 2 weeks. And I got an email the next day that said, yeah, you can't be around the kids. In that moment, I forgot that I had a record. Like, I'm doing good. I'm 4 years clean, but I had a double page of charges and things like that. And in that moment, I felt so insecure again, and went right back to that day one. I'm worthless. I'm no good. I have I have nothing to offer. And then I took a step back. I'm like, you know what? I've come a long way, and I'm not going to be a piece of paper anymore. So I printed my background check off. I made an appointment with that same dude that denied me. I went in, sat down. He's like, yeah, what are we here for? And I passed it across the table, and his eyes just got big. And I was like, where would you like me to start? And I shared a little bit of my story. And by the end of it, he was teary-eyed, and he stamped me approved. And he said, we need more coaches like you.
That started. Amazing. That's dope.
That started my journey into working with the youth. And I found that if we can help kids not ever get to that point, tell them the truth, help them build the skills, help them sit in the pain a little bit and work through it, that we can do away with the prison system, that we can, intervention's great, but prevention's way better.
Prevention. Yes.
So I've dedicated my life, and, I'm the only non-clinician ran program in the state that's accepted by the courts. I've stood in front of many judges explaining myself and my program and why I'm better and why I feel that other addicts with some background and some knowledge and education behind it are going to be able to help more people. So I'm trying to make a swing in a very, very critical state where we have very high religious rate and kind of a keeping up with the Joneses mentality. Everybody knows everybody. And I don't know, trying to put out the fire. My dad did a really amazing job of making an amazing name. He was a school board president. He was the majority whip in the state Senate. He helped so many people, and everything he did, I'm just back there lighting it on fire. So I want to make him proud. I know that if I do the next right thing, that maybe one day I get to see him again. And I have my daughter now. She's 11, and I have an amazing relationship with her. I have an amazing relationship with her mother. All these things due to my recovery, and not being content with an AA meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Right? For me, that's preschool. That gives you a voice. That gives you the gas to go out and spend some miles out helping other people, out learning, out facing some pain. So that's the short version of how I got to where I'm at, man.
Getting into a program and working the program gives you a life, and then it creates many more opportunities, and it's up to us to capitalize on them and do other things to supplement our recovery, because not everyone can sit in a meeting and stay clean and sober. You know, there's so much more to life that we missed out on growing up. And when we stay clean and sober, we can do and be anything we want, right?
That's what I found the scary part to be. Like when I set a 5-year plan with my dad before he passed, just to make him happy, that was unrealistic. And then I hit it in 3 years. I was like, oh, maybe I'm not stupid.
Yeah.
Maybe I am not worthless anymore. Maybe, like, that's the scary part. I can do whatever I want.
Mm-hmm.
Like, pretty amazing to know that. And man, there's so many different outlets for recovery. I think people get closed in where they feel comfortable, you know, and I was talking to a kid today he's having a hard time putting a couple days together, and I'm just like, man, there's got to be more. You gotta want this, and if you don't like this, do this. If you don't like this, like, so many people use fitness when they get in recovery, but you can't outrun a bad attitude. You know,
right.
It doesn't matter. It's the same as a drug. Like, if you don't have the tools, if you don't use, like, when you're doing good, do you ride that out, or do you use that time to do even more? Like, I feel like there's a lot of coasting, and there's a lot of excuses and things like that. And I just want to grind. I want to get, and I want to help as many people as I can. And in order to do that, I got to put my money where my mouth is, because if I'm not willing to do it, I can't tell anybody else to do it.
You got to face some fears. You got to face some self-doubt, and you got to put in hard work and consistency, perseverance, and the ability to pick yourself up if you fall short, right?
Absolutely. That's the big thing that I talk to my wrestlers about, is if you go and you give 100%, it's either win or learn. There is no loss there. By not doing is the only loss. By not trying, by giving up, I don't care what you do. If you can come and look me in the face and say you gave me 100, great. I've got your back. Like, people are so worried about failure, and I don't even. That's how I make 6 figures a year, is off of my failures. Like, I love failing because I learn a lot more than I do when I win.
And you're open to it, and you don't take it personal, right?
No. And if I truly feel that if I'm not failing, I'm not trying hard enough.
That's amazing.
Like,
and
like, we got a saying here
having that positive mindset helps.
Yeah. We got a saying here in Utah, because we have some of the best skiing in the world. If you didn't fall today, you didn't ski hard enough. Right?
Yeah.
It's kind of the same thing. Like, if you didn't like not get accepted to 5 of those jobs, if you get the first job you applied to, you didn't try hard enough. Like, shoot a little higher.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so I think people sell themselves short, and they don't surround themselves with people who see their potential and are willing to hold them accountable to that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we get comfortable with our buddies and whatever, and it's just that mediocre. Nobody's grinding. Everybody's talking about it. Nobody's moving.
Absolutely.
So
for people that are new in recovery, how valuable is nutrition and physical activity?
In my personal opinion, you can't have a clean mind without a clean body.
Gotcha.
Like, I don't care. You may be happy, you may be sober, but I promise you're not happy if you're overweight, if your knees hurt every day when you can't move as much as you'd like to, you don't like seeing yourself naked in the mirror, all those personal things. But it's an easy way to put it is crap in, crap out, good in, good out. It's like, I don't know if you're a car guy, you know, top fuel dragsters, you don't put gas in, right? It's gonna putter out or whatever. But at whatever level that is, that might just be not eating ice cream for one day. You know, take it a day at a time. Eating right is as hard as getting off of heroin, man. I own a gym. It's hard for me to go to the gym some days. But it's consistency. If that's walking around your block once a day for 30 days, great.
Just
if that's
moving.
Yeah. And you can scale any workout. Like a lot of people, I'll post a workout and they'll be like, how about you put it for the rest of us? And it's like, you can scale anything. Like if I say do 15 push-ups and you can't do that, then do 5, you know, just the same thing to scale it back. But a big part for me is I learn what I'm made of and how hard I can push, and then pushing past that in a gym where nothing bad's going to happen. But if I wait to do that on a bad day in the real world, I might use again. You know, I want to be everything I have, all my tattoos, they're literally strapped on. This is my armor to remind me of the battle I fight every day. Like, I don't want to forget. I don't care what the judgment, the this or the that. I have a battle. It's life or death for me. And if I don't prepare for that, like I love like Gladiator or Braveheart. It's like these dudes are out training every day, all day, preparing for that day. They're not waiting for a fight to come. They're preparing for the fight to come. And that's just the mentality that I live my life in. And that's where I personally have to be. A lot of people aren't intense and see it that way, but I don't think that. Go ahead.
Mindy Andrade says, good to see you on here, Rob Eastman.
Hey, that's a Utah girl. How are you? Thanks for listening in.
I'm sorry.
So she's another life coach and interventionist here in the Valley and helps women and stuff. She's rad.
That's awesome. You know, we need to support each other and help each other get each other's messages out. What benefits do nutrition and fitness give to the brain chemistry, and repairing the brain chemistry, the dopamine production, serotonin?
Yeah, so I didn't understand how it all worked, but when we use drugs, we're getting a fake dopamine, a fake serotonin, and so our body's very efficient, so it shuts it off in the brain. And then when you stop using the drug, that's where the withdrawal is, because you're not getting that. But once you get back to it, fitness is going to help produce that on a daily basis if you train to a certain amount of tempo, right? If you get your heart rate up, if you push past. But ultimately, you can't outrun a bad diet either. So the diet is as or more important than anything. So rather than taking things away, I always have people add. So I would have them send me a 4-day journal. Like if you're listening, write down what goes in your mouth, how much goes in your mouth, when it goes in your mouth for the next 4 days. When you think you only have a little bit of this or a little bit of that, and you see it on paper that you have a little bit of that 7 times a day, and it adds up to be a lot of that, that's real easy to look at yourself and hold yourself accountable when you're tracking it. So rather than, a lot of people will just eat like heavy carbs and they have no protein or they have no vegetables. So rather than cutting what they like out, cutting the pizza out, I have them add 3 protein shakes a day. So they're getting more. So their body's starting to get what it needs. And then naturally, once you start eating healthy, your body's going to it'll be a little bit easier to get rid of some of the carbs and things like that. So rather than taking away, add 2. If you're going to have an ice cream cone, have a handful of broccoli as well. All right. But once you can get the nutrition dialed in, dude, so much of anxiety, so much of depression is tied directly to what is going in your mouth. And that's fact, that's science. And I didn't believe it. And a lot of people in recovery too, they're like, oh man, my anxiety's through the roof, as they're holding a Bang or a Rockstar or a coffee. It's like, how many of those you had today? Well, they're 2 for $1. I bought 6. So you got to take a hard look at how sensitive. I'm so sensitive to caffeine because of my meth use. Like, I can have one smaller cup in the morning, but if I have 2, my day is gone. I'm anxiety all day.
Right.
Just not happening.
We've altered our brain chemistry and the way our body, processes these things we put in. And once I've noticed for myself, eating a clean diet, that when I put junk in my body, I don't feel so good. You know what I mean? It doesn't sit well in my stomach. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a lot of, I'm sure if you've done drugs or if you drink or you're coming off drugs, I'm pretty sure you're probably taking Tums and you have a lot of stomach issues. I think that just comes with the deal. If you do intermittent fasting, meaning, so I only eat between the hours of noon and 8 p.m. Okay. I don't eat anything on the other. Within 24 hours, those problems will be gone.
Seriously,
it happens.
I'd like to learn more about that, because I'm trying to shed some body fat, like in my stomach.
Yeah, so that's a great way to limit your intake. And it's not bad for you. It actually, there's a lot of apps that you can get on that it tells you what's going on during that time frame that it's off. And a lot of them will ask you to fast for 72 hours on, 4 months down the road, where you do not eat anything for 72 hours. You can have, and it'll give you some different things that you can take. But at 72 hours, your body has eaten all of the bad cells, like cancerous cells, things like that, and is regenerating new good cells. I mean, it is crazy how efficient your body is if you just stop feeding your face. Like, it gets so deep in there, but these apps will tell you and walk you through it. I can't even remember what mine's called, but they're amazing. I mean, it just dumbs it down. You don't even need to know. It'll tell you when to eat, how to eat, and but it's been very beneficial to me, because then I'm a little more disciplined too. Like, if I have from this to eat, then I know that's all I get. And I pre-make my meals every Sunday. So portion control is major too. So eating because you're bored and all those things, like drink, have some water, and stay hydrated that way. But the one thing that I had to do early on was I had to set an alarm on my phone. And I set it, I was eating 6 times a day when I was cage fighting and things. And when that alarm went off, I ate what was in the box, and that was all I got. And so knowing that, like, it was like 2 strips of chicken, a little bit of rice, and 5 things of broccoli. When that was gone, I could switch my mind off, and I knew that was all I was going to eat. I wasn't going to finish the bag of chips, or I'm still kind of hungry and rummaging through the refrigerator. So when I have those boundaries set, and I know that, and when the alarm goes off, whether I'm hungry or not, I eat what I've put in there, whether it's a protein shake or whatever. But when you can get dialed in on that, like if you get serious about that, like you are about hitting your meetings or whatever, just take you to the next level for sure.
That's right. Tell us about your podcast.
So my podcast is called Stand and Fight, and it is 100. I've got this tattoo. It says it's better to stand and fight. If you run, you will only die tired. And that meant a lot to me, man. I avoided the bullies. I avoided dealing with my mental health. I avoided the anxiety. I always numbed out, and I knew that it was time to stand and fight. And so I figured that was a fitting name for my podcast, where it's kind of similar to you, man. I got guys, men and women who are facing adversity, and it's centered around mental health. And just, man, there's so many cool stories and so many powerful stories of stay-at-home moms, of multimillionaires that have lost it all, and other, like, we're all amazing coaches, man. There's so much to be given, and you never know that the piece you have to give might be the piece that guy's missing. So people need to get more brave and share their stories and be willing to come out of that shell. I feel like your secrets keep you sick. And ultimately, if you're not willing to expose all of your deep, dark secrets, that you're going to be sick forever.
Right.
So,
yeah, I really love what you have going on. I haven't had an opportunity to listen to your podcast yet, but I've seen some of the guests you've had on there. You've had UFC fighters, like you said. You just had a female guest on last week.
Yeah, there's some crazy, like she's a mother of two. She had a police standoff. Her and her kids were in the sight of her husband's gun. It was going to be a murder suicide. So now she's dealing with the PTSD of her and her kids, and moving forward. Like, it's just powerful, man. I got one that I brought a lady on. Somebody's like, you need to talk to this lady. And she was talking about pain management. And I'm like, pretty hard for me to get on board with pain management, man. But she brought in this deal where her husband got bit by a tick, and he had Rocky Mountain fever, which it was like permanent nerve damage, right? So I didn't really think of that. If you're dying of cancer, if you're dying of this and that, but as this opioid epidemic has come through, the insurance companies are going in and they're kicking these people off of their meds. So they're in severe pain.
Sure.
And this dude, she ended up playing her husband's suicide message on my podcast. Oh. They lost their father and their husband, and there's just this rabbit hole. Their mental health. We've got to get willing to talk about it. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's got to be the cool thing to do is talk about your shit, because or can I say that? I don't mean to swear, but
okay.
Is we're all afraid to be judged. We want to fit in. We don't want to be looked down upon. We don't want, like, social. If people do that, then you're with the wrong people. Like, over 10 years of doing this deal, I've heard it all. From dudes looking at kiddie porn that I want to choke them out, and down to, I've heard it all. Prostitution and this and that. I'm not here to judge, but I know that if you don't get that out, you're going to be sick. And I'm going to have a problem, because the more sick people we have out on the streets, the more dangerous it is. We've got to make it okay. We've got to make it a safe place. And I hate that word too, but for people to come and be real and know that no matter what's going on, we want them to get better. Even if we don't agree with what they're doing, if we don't help them get better, who's going to do it?
That's right.
I don't know how.
We have to be the person that bridges the gaps to get people from where they are to where they need to be, so they can be the best versions of themselves that they can be. And what better way to inspire people than to share your struggles, your hardships, your shortcomings. It's really hard to inspire someone when you try to present yourself as being perfect, and
I think we're hopefully on the end of that deal. I think most of that generation of keeps family secrets and all that stuff are in the rest homes. And unfortunately, that's where a lot of knowledge is as well. Mm-hmm. I love sitting with old people and picking their brains, because, man, they live through some stuff.
Yeah.
And, like, man, you could really help us out by being honest about how you did that. Mm-hmm. Staying married for 70 years. How the hell did you do that? Like, I needed some of those secrets.
Like 2 marriages ago.
So hopefully we become, and we teach our children that it's okay to be vulnerable, that it's okay to be humble, that it's okay to be friends with people that you don't agree with their religious beliefs or their political beliefs, or, whatever it is, and just get real.
Yes, be accepting of people for who they are and where they're at. We don't have to be responsible for changing them. What we're responsible for is our actions, that hopefully someone will take something from what we display and use it to their advantage to better their life.
Yeah. So I'm over here in my own little bubble of man, I want to help anybody out of anything. Like, I'll put in as much as you put in. Let's go. And we need a million more of us. You know, you're doing your thing. You're helping a lot of people. But I don't know about you, but my phone gets flooded. And I'm only one dude. And I like, if you've ever been thinking about getting clean and doing more, now's the time. You know,
Absolutely.
we're all capable of amazing things. I love that Albert Einstein deal where if a fish is judged by the way it climbs a tree, it will forever feel stupid.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
And it's like, we all have a gift. You don't need to be a plastic surgeon. You don't got to be a religious person. If your family's that way, you guys like go out, be a good person. So,
and you probably learned that to apply that because of how you grew up, you know, with your father being a patriarch, you know, and was it your uncle that was in the church? He was an elder.
Yeah.
You know, and
maybe
you felt like you were in the shadows of them and you had to measure up to them.
Yeah, absolutely. And come to find out, all they wanted from me was for me to do my best. It's like, I wish I could have wrapped my head around that at 15 years old.
Right.
But so in my eyes, I needed to be successful, had dollars in it, you know?
I so get that, you know, and then our loved ones don't really have those type of expectations on us. They just want to see us doing well and being happy and productive, right?
Yeah. And that really is it. And I think we put our own assumptions of what they want for us. And then a lot of people, I know I spent a lot of time doing what I thought would make others happy that I knew wasn't going to make me happy, which ultimately led to damn near my demise, you know?
Right. You're living proof that recovery is possible. You're a walking, talking miracle. You know, you're on the brink of suicide and demise by your own hands, and you were saved by a power greater than yourself. And it's just volumes for who you are and the life that you live today. I mean, you're emulating a role model and someone that's lived these hardships and turned it all around. And it must be so rewarding to work with the kids, you know, especially disadvantaged kids with, you know, that are in a rough upbringing. You know, you give them a safe place to be, to escape that, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing and it's heartbreaking, and you know, you get both sides. But that you get that one kid that you see the light go on in his eyes and it recharges you for 6 months, and there's some days I'm just like, I sit back and I look around, I'm just like, how in the heck did I get here? Like I overdosed in 2007 and I flatlined 4 times. I was in a coma for 10 days. Like, I'm here for a reason, and I can't deny that now, and it keeps changing. So I don't ever get my mind or heart set on one area, because I've worked with kids, I work with adults, I work with prisoners. I'm kind of God's soldier, and wherever He sends me, I try and be prepared for that. And when I get feeling too good, He reminds me who's in charge. He's he can humble me real quick.
At least you're open to that and receptive, and you can feel that.
Yeah. Yeah, he's real quick to be like, yeah, sit down, buddy.
You're not all that today.
Yeah. So I'm in charge here. I got the strings. So, but yeah, man, fitness, psychology, nutrition, sharing my story. Like, I do a lot of motivational speaking as well. And the only reason that I started really doing that is because I was terrified of sharing my story. But I knew if I didn't face some of those things,
for me, yes,
you know, that I would live forever in the shadows, and I was uncomfortable there. So I have a philosophy. I do something that scares me weekly, and I do something that terrifies me monthly.
Wow.
So in that journey, I got certified as a skydiver last year. I was scared of heights and all that, and so I figured jumping out of a plane would be a great way to get past that. And I fell in love with the lesson that I learned during that fall. So I ended up going along and getting certified so I could jump by myself. I've become a pretty decent rock climber. Being around horses and shooting guns and just kind of becoming a well-rounded human being, whether I enjoy it or not. Mountain biking, skiing, try and stay active, but constantly. I don't want to live in fear, but I constantly face it on purpose, for a purpose.
I agree. It's a challenge. The challenge of it all. Not to prove yourself to anybody other than yourself, right?
Yeah, I think that's really what started me cage fighting too. Was I always acted tough, but because I was so good at acting that people, what if somebody was actually tough and they called me out? I'd probably be in serious trouble. So I figured I better learn how to fight. Same deal. Went in there, got my ass kicked, and I fell in love with it. Like I faced more fear, more anxiety walking from the locker room to the cage. Like if I would have had any more adrenaline, I would have passed out. Like it was so scary. And the more I did it, the more comfortable I became. And then the less I acted out of fear. And my decision making is way better.
Yeah.
So,
because you're not so impulsive, right? Like feeling you have to defend yourself or you're going to be perceived as weak.
Exactly. And now people popping off whatever, I just smile. Like I'm pretty good at jiu-jitsu. I'm a pretty good striker. I'm a real good wrestler.
I bet you are.
I can handle my own now. So I don't have to be fearful. I think that's when you get into that fight or flight mode, it's a scary place to be. And I didn't want to be there anymore.
Right. I spent a majority of my life in fight or flight. Always feeling like I was backed into a corner and then acting so irrationally because I felt I had to defend myself. I could not be perceived as weak or someone would take advantage of me. And in my lifestyle, it wasn't too far-fetched to believe that I could have been a victim at any time.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's a million reasons to face your fears, to find your weaknesses and expose them. And life, man, I can't even explain how good life is, even on the bad days, dude.
I seen a picture of, or it was a picture or a video. You were getting your leg tattooed, and your daughter was there with you.
Yeah.
That's
yeah, man.
That's awesome. So, getting tattooed, what does it do something for you besides getting the artwork?
No, I don't like it, man. It hurts. My pain,
it's more irritating than
my pain tolerance. It used to be good, but I've got about 50. I'm probably coming up on 60 hours worth of tattoos, and I put my wrestling mouth guard in, biting down. It's pretty uncomfortable, but I do it because I don't ever want to forget, and I don't want people. I want to give people an easier second chance than I had. So I kind of did it. My dad told me before he died, he said, dress for the job you want. And I want to help those less fortunate. And I want people, when I walk into a room, to judge the tattooed guy. And then I end up being the keynote speaker. As I walk up, they're like, why is this guy here? And they're the ones that just paid my way to get there. So
I love it.
And somebody asked me about tattoos the other day, like, do you recommend it to people? And I don't. Right? If you don't have your shit together, if your life isn't together, I highly suggest you don't get tattoos until you do.
Right.
Like you get judged. You will lose jobs because of it. You'll lose relationships because of it. And if you're not super confident in yourself and comfortable, then you're going to have a bad time.
Yeah.
So I pushed really hard and I got in with some pretty
very painful.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah, the inside the back of the arm, dude. Whew.
Really?
And the leg. Oh yeah. Like if you pinch yourself, anywhere you pinch, if it hurts, it's gonna hurt real bad. So I'm always like, but luckily, my girlfriend, she works at a dermatologist, and so she gets me some high numbing cream.
Nice.
Yeah,
Good
that
for
works
you.
for a minute. But in general, yeah, man. So no,
What is that?
That doesn't do anything for me.
What's on your shirt? Is that what I think it is?
Say that again.
Your shirt. What's on
My
your
shirt?
Yeah.
It's I can't remember what it's called, but it's
Is that the HA?
it's a fitness. No, it's can't remember what it's called, but it's kind of like a No More Excuses fitness brand.
Love it.
Like live with no regrets. And with that, like Indians, so I was born and raised LDS, which is Mormon. But then I went to Mount Everest 3 years ago and took a group to Mount Everest Base Camp. So I spent a lot of time with the Buddhist monks. I went to school in Israel. So I've got all these different religious beliefs, and I do Indian sweats, and I get something from all of them. So I really love any hunter, warrior, gatherer, like the Polynesian culture, the Scottish people, the Indians and things like that, where there's deep culture in survival. I'm drawn to that.
That's dope.
So
there's a lot of life knowledge in those things.
Yeah, man. That's what if you're set in your religious beliefs, I challenge you to go find out why. Like most people have never even been to another church. It's like, how can you be so sure about something when you don't know anything about anything else?
Right.
So
about adding value to your life and educating yourself and finding some discipline, right?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
It's so hard for us addicts and alcoholics to have any kind of discipline.
Yeah.
But it's
structure, discipline, and grind, man. That's the three important and some people around you who are going to hold you accountable.
That's cool.
Like real accountability. So I think those are super important. So
what are some words of encouragement for somebody that may be just starting this journey, in recovery? What would you say are the important things that, they should focus on to move forward and be a better version of themselves?
Yeah, for me, the biggest deal was, even when my life was blown up, everything around me was on fire, I still wanted to do things my way. And I think if you can humble yourself and surround yourself with some people who are willing to pretty much tell you what to do, man, my mentors, they saved my life. I had to put the shovel down. I had to shut up and show up. And I quit jobs because of my mental health. My mental health came first. And I knew that if I wasn't around the right people and I wasn't around I was pretty bad at the start, man. I was super insecure, super high level anxiety, very depressed, very suicidal still. And, they say a day at a time. I was like living 5 minutes at a time. And I lived in fear every single day. And that's okay. And now if you can take that time, it's rather than believing that it's happening to you, I believe that it's happening for me. And rather than taking it personal, I just take a step back and be like, what am I supposed to learn in this? Because that's all it is. It's a lesson. Mm-hmm. I don't feel like the universe picks on anybody. Mm-hmm. If you keep picking C, then the answer is B. Life is he's gonna remind you until you pick B.
Absolutely. So, and stop taking everything so personally, right?
Yeah, we're uber sensitive, man. Mm-hmm. So for sure, and I think just give yourself a break, man. Forgiveness, like you do a 4th step or whatever, and your resentments and all that stuff. A lot of people forget to put themselves on that list. True. We gotta tell ourselves all the things we hate, and then we gotta forgive ourselves, and I think ultimately your inner circle during that first little bit is super important. And my belief is it's better to be alone than with the wrong people.
Yes.
So.
So one more question. Do you think that the physical activity helps with your mental health. Like
1,000%.
that, I believe that wholeheartedly. You know, like I suffer from depression, ADHD, and I have PTSD. And being physically active helps me. So much so that if I don't do something, I'm just like I may collapse on myself from time to time. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. So for early recovery, I know a lot of people, I know how I felt. Dude, I could barely even get out of bed.
Right.
So to think of any exercise, I was like, dude, don't even talk to me about that. But if you can get up, if you're good, feeling good enough to go for a run, if you run a mile a day, man, you're going to be feeling amazing. But fitness mixed with good people, mixed with good nutrition, mixed with some psychology, mixed with some recovery, I mean, you got to have it. Like, that's just, people are like, oh, fitness isn't my thing. It's like, it's not a thing. It's like, do you have a car and you don't put gas in it? Like, you just let it sit there? Like, your body, you got to live in that thing for a long time, and keeping it healthy, keeping it clean is the only way you're going to last for a while. So it's kind of it's not even an option. It's just one of the pillars of recovery is fitness, nutrition, community. You know,
And what about
not even
what about the self-affirmations and positive self-talk?
I think that's important too, but it's also like the positivity all the time is a botched philosophy.
It's unrealistic.
But if you don't get up and start your day off right, then no doubt it's going to be wrong. You know, can't just get up. One big thing for me is you got to put a target on your day, and that usually happens the night before. So, and then if you get a few things done before noon or whatever, that's a win. You can feel good about your day. You got up, you showered, you made your bed, you applied for a job. No matter what happens the rest of the day, you won, right? But if you get up late, you rush to get something done, it's just not a good way to live. And positivity's, you know, I wake up and I listen to Eric Thomas. I like him a lot because he's loud and he's in my face, and I've met him and spent a little time with him. And
really,
but I always listen to books. Yeah. So if you go on my Instagram and go back a little bit, you'll see me. His room was right across from my room in San Diego. I heard his voice. I went out in the hallway. I was like, Eric. He's turned around, and we shot the shit for about 30 minutes in the hallway. He's pretty rad dude.
Yeah.
So, but I'm listening to self-help books all the time, motivation all the time. Doesn't mean I'm going to be happy all the time, but I don't let it derail me. I can restart my day at any point. So self-awareness and self-love are the two most important things of any life, regardless. Drugs, alcohol, doesn't matter. If you don't love yourself and you're not aware of the moods and the things that you're putting out in the universe, you got no chance.
I agree. Self-acceptance and recognizing your patterns too, for me. Yeah.
That's where journaling and tracking your moods and things like that, I think, is great. There's a character defects list you can look up on Google, and it just describes what the different defects are, and you can write about the two that affected you most that day, and you'll find a pattern and start working on that one at a time. I think that's a great way to do it.
For every negative defect of character we have, there's a positive action to be taken to counteract that.
Yeah. So they have one that has the negative and the positive.
Okay. It's good.
So it's easy to look at that, to be like, okay, if I'm angry, what should I be? You know, so it's cool.
That's cool.
It's a good way to do things.
Do you have any clothing? Do you have a clothing line? Do you have any merchandise?
Yeah, I do. I don't have it online. I have it. It's my EF that we got here, and then I've got some Eastman recovery stuff, and I do different logos about once a quarter, so I never remake the same thing. But I just like to wear the recovery brand. I get a lot of conversations about it, and usually put some kind of a saying on the back that gets people thinking.
Yeah.
You know,
That's the whole
So-
goal. The whole goal with wearing recovery wear, it creates a conversation.
Yeah, I think people everybody's dealing with something. That's what I don't get. We're all dealing with something. Don't you want to talk about it? Do you want to be alone in that? I know I don't. I can't stand it. And if me talking about real stuff is too much for you, then I don't want to be in your circle anyways.
That's right.
You know,
Real
I want to be
real talk.
Yeah, I faked it for too many years. It didn't pan out very well.
Fake it till you make it is garbage ass advice, right?
Yeah, that didn't work out. Didn't work out at all. So, but yeah, I just do have my gym, and then I have my life coaching that got a website on there, tattooedlifecoach.com, where I help people all over. I also work with PTSD people. I have it and have been certified on that. Work with military, police, or other people that have been through traumatic stuff. And
you got a lot of credentials, man.
I've tried, man. I don't like the big box school, so I went and took every certification possible and self-study and knowledge is knowledge, you know.
Knowledge is power.
So, yeah.
That's so cool. So if I ever find myself out in the Farmington area, can I go riding horses with you?
Absolutely. Yeah, I would love for you to come out. If it depends on the time of the season, we can go. Man, you can snow ski and play golf in the same day. I don't know many states that can do that. Like we have sand dunes, we have red rock, we have high mountains, it's a cool state.
You got plenty of hiking out there, huh?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I'm literally I'm looking out my window at snow capped. Our mountains out here, we're probably at 9,000 feet. I'm at 4,500 where I'm at right now, but there's 10,000 foot mountains all around me.
That's amazing. I've seen your backdrop. Quite beautiful.
Yeah, it's a cool scene. So feel lucky. I mean, going from homeless to owning a farm and a business and a nonprofit and all these things, it's like, if I can do it, I know people say this all the time, but if I can do it, anybody can do it. Dude, I was so dumb in school, but I found something I was passionate about, and I put my best foot forward, and
you applied it
now. Yeah.
Yeah, we never know what we're truly capable of until we get clean and sober and actually put some effort into something.
Absolutely.
We can do and be anything we want.
Absolutely.
Coach, thank you for being here. It's been a great show. I really, truly appreciate it.
Yeah, man, I really appreciate you doing it. But I'm serious. I don't want this to be the friendship. I want to meet you someday.
Absolutely.
Whether you come out here or I come out there or something, man, we got a team together. I've got some other guys that I should introduce you to as well that are powerhouses in their own. I've got a buddy in Canada. I've got a buddy in Vegas. I've got a buddy in Denver that are all doing amazing things on big scales. That if we could line that thing up, man, we could really make a change. So I really appreciate you more than you know. I think what you're doing is amazing. I appreciate the work you do with vets. Man, God bless our military and the scars we don't see, the untold, the mental health stuff. Man, somebody's got to be there, and I really appreciate that you do that for them.
Thank you so much for that. Has anybody got any questions or comments before we shut this down? You guys have been an amazing audience. A lot of comments, a lot of love, a lot.
Sorry, I talk a lot.
No, that's perfect. You did an amazing job. Thank you, gentlemen. Amazing video. Thank you, Joyce. Your friend that was on here. Scrolling back to see her name.
Mindy,
yes. Mindy, she gave you a lot of compliments. She really respects what you do in your community.
I appreciate that.
Rob, he has so much love to offer. He is an amazing warrior. He speaks at many of the local high schools and is such a catalyst for not only adults but youth. That's powerful. That's love right there.
I appreciate that, Mindy. Thank you. Yeah, and it's weird. Like when I hear stuff like that, I feel I still have a hard time accepting compliments. It's been 11 years. Like it'll be 11 years in September, and some that unworthiness, the like I just want to help. I don't want to be praised for it.
Right.
And somebody was like, "How come you get to help people, but you don't ever let anybody help you?" And that was pretty powerful. I was like, I guess you're right, you know? So I've had to learn to sit back and try and accept some of those things, but it's hard, you know?
I totally agree. Compliments make me uncomfortable as well, but they say, when you're uncomfortable, you're growing. So,
so anybody that's listening on here, can I shout out my stuff?
Absolutely, please do.
So on Instagram, I'm Coach Eastman 8. That's the number 8. And then I post workouts every day during this virus deal. I'm Rob Eastman on Facebook. And then my podcast is Stand and Fight Podcast. And you can get it on Apple Podcasts, Pandora, Spotify, Buzzsprout. And then you can find me also if you're struggling or need help or want to chat, tattooedlifecoach.com.
Perfect.
So, and then you can find my nonprofit's Eastman Family Recovery Foundation, but that's all attached in my social media stuff. So I'd love to get some new friends from out of state, and also any of my friends watching, check out Higgy. We'll share the love and different opinions from different states and different minds. We need to share it all, man.
I truly appreciate you taking the time to jump on here. You really, you add value to what I'm trying to do, just the quality of guests that you are, what you do in your community is just heads and shoulders above so many other people. And you're someone to look up to and model what somebody else, if they're looking for somebody to look up to, I would say you're the man. You put the work in, you educated yourself, and you applied the knowledge you gained, with the pain you've endured, and turned it into a purpose. So I applaud you for that, my friend. Thank you for everything you do for people like us, and keep doing what you're doing. I'll be talking to you soon. Okay.
All right, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on, sir.
You bet, buddy. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Please continue to share this out. You can continue commenting. If you want to reach out to Rob, please do. He always gets back in a timely manner, and I can guarantee he'll always be honest and truthful with you. Good night, everybody. I'm Higgy, and I'm out. Peace out.
Thanks, guys. Later.
Later.